Live from Central Kentucky's WCYN studios, you're listening to Quarantainment, a live entertainer's response to COVID-19. Each week, we interview industry professionals from around the world and gain insights into how they're coping with the adverse effects of the coronavirus and creatively adapting to the new normal. Without any further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome to the proverbial stage award-winning illusionist, escape artist, actor, your host, and creator of the Quarantainment podcast. This is Reed Masterson.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Quarantainment, the socially distant podcast. My name is Reed Masterson, and this is episode 5. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to episode 10. I'm going to just not do that anymore, I guess. No, thank you guys so much for joining us here. Episode 5. I am hanging out with my good friend, Mr. John Shaw. John is a sideshow circus performer, sideshow paranormal magic show illusionist, crazy man. I don't know. There's so many titles you could give John. Original sinner, something like that. Yeah, it's John's a good friend of mine. He's direct coming off with us from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm super excited for this interview. I think you're going to really like this one. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the stage my good buddy, Mr. John Shaw.
Boom.
Oh, there we go. Pow. Yeah, I gotcha.
Technology.
Yeah, right? John, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, man. You know, just enjoying the beautiful weather. It was like 107 here today.
Oh, yeah? I think it was like 77 here today. So.
Oh, yeah.
Which for me is hot.
That's winter. That's what we call winter.
But you don't have humidity, though. See, that's the difference.
No, but neither does the sun. So.
Yeah, I when we came out there a couple years ago, last time we seen you, I think it was like 111 when we got off the plane or something. I
think it was during Wonderground, right?
Yeah, it was August. Yeah. Eye sockets dried out and nose started bleeding. You know,
yeah. People who come here from the humidity, I always tell them, I'm like, drink lots of water. Make sure you moisturize your skin. I know it sounds silly, but it's like if you don't live here, it beats you up, man. Yeah,
it's dry, but I honestly enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoy the humid heat. So my better half, Ashton, is from Florida, and she loved humidity. You know, like the whole everything humidity wise in Florida. And then she come up here, moved to Kentucky, and now when she goes back to Florida, she can't stand it. So
yeah.
But yeah, all right, man. Well, thanks first off, for joining me.
No worries.
It's kind of a crazy world that we're living in, and
it's very weird.
It's this podcast is a brand new thing for me, and something I never really thought I would do prior to now. But it's been super fun getting to chat with people some people I don't know so well, some people I know pretty well, like you, and I'm excited to chat. So let's give the listeners, viewers, everybody kind of a backstory on you. So you're a sideshow circus performer, but you really started out doing magic, right? Like that was kind of the main thing was magic originally, and it's
for
just
a number of years
adapted into this craziness that it is now.
Yeah, so I started like most boys. I saw a magician when I was very young, and when I was in school. Actually, there was a magician came to our we called them assemblies. I don't know what you guys call them, but we would have little assemblies. People would come in and talk about different things. This guy came to our school, and he used magic as a way to explain science. Okay. And so he was using magic tricks mixed with science effects, and it was really cool. And I was like, wow, this magic stuff is really bad. I was just blown away, and I was like, this is really cool. Then, of course, we go to a birthday party, there would be a magician. You know, they had magicians in and around different places that I had access to. And as I got older, I got into scouts, like Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, that kind of thing. and we had these blue and gold dinners, and there was a guy who came to the blue and gold dinner and did magic as a clown. And after the show, because my father was part of the troop leader kind of thing, and so they were paying them. And so afterwards, he took me, backstage, and by backstage I mean literally behind a curtain, and asked the guy, "Hey, listen, my son's really into magic. Can you help him?" Because at the time I had like the Blackstone Magic kits. Like that was my first thing, was getting the Blackstone Magic kits, which was really hilarious because fast forward several decades later, I'm on tour with Masters of Illusion, living on a tour bus with Gabe Blackstone.
Yeah, that's great.
And her and I shared all kinds of stories, and I talked about the different places I saw them and how I snuck backstage at West Point and so that I could meet them and like all kinds of stuff. It was just great. She's just such she became like my magic tour mom, and she does that for a lot of people. When you work with her, she's such a great woman and has seen it all, like literally seen it all, and tells like the best tour stories of elephants and doing all kinds of weird shit. It's really great. But I met this guy. I still remember his name. His name was Al Warman. I don't think he's alive anymore, but his name was Al Warman. And he gave me a phone number of a guy who sold magic from his house. So, okay. I mean, it seems kind of sketchy. Here's this guy who's got magic in his basement, and this, like 12-year-old kid is going to go there. So my dad took me, and I went down there, and I remember walking down the stairs, and it had a weird funky basement smell. And then you walk into this room, and it was just packed floor to ceiling with books and magic props and a lot of magic things and stuff with prism tape and Chinese airbrush lettering on everything and dragons and just like all this.
So you went to
stuff.
Abbott's?
Yeah, it sounds like that. There was a lot of Abbott stuff there. He had a lot of Abbott's things. Actually, the first illusion I ever bought was an Abbott's sword basket made out of fiberglass. That was the very first illusion.
I've seen those. Yeah.
Yes. It was $300. I remember I saved up like all the birthday party magic money, and I kept saving for a couple of years, and I finally bought it. But when my first time in there was really neat because he was really great. His name was Stan. They called him Magic Stan. I don't remember his last name off the top of my head, but I want to say Stan Williams or something like that. But he saw me just explode with excitement. And then was like, "Hey, listen, let's take it down," because he's like, "All the stuff you're looking at, I get it." He's like, "But that's not where you are right now." And he gave me the best piece of advice. He's like, "This is what's going to happen. You're going to buy a ton of things, and then eventually you're going to figure out what you actually want to do." He was like, and it's going to take a while, and you're going to buy a lot of stuff, and then you're not going to like it, or you're going to sell it and give it away, and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "But the best thing you can buy are books." Now, this is before VHS tapes and obviously DVDs and all that stuff, and way before the internet. But I was like, I just was like, I know I want stuff. And the first thing I bought was a hot rod, sponge balls, Goshman sponge balls with a book. He made sure that I bought the book that came with all the tricks, and I think I got a scotch and soda effect. I think that was the first things I walked out with that day, and those were my beginner tricks. And I just went home, and my mom and dad and anybody, I took them to school, I took them everywhere, and I just did them terribly over and over and over again until eventually I got better at it. And he was right. Because I started out with that, and then it grew and grew, and then my tastes changed, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on magic at this point in my life. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like it's you can't explain this to normal people.
No.
and it would blow people's minds what we buy and how much it costs. Like you paid what for what? Like, like I bought 2 quarters.
I bought 2 quarters, and that was
for $50.
$200.
Yeah, like it's like you can get those.
Like, but they're quarters. I'm like, but no, you don't understand.
Yeah,
These are funny. True ring quarters. Look, bing.
Yeah, exactly. So So yeah, so you start out doing magic, and now you got into the sideshow, and
Yeah.
did you
So
get into
the sideshow thing
with haunted houses?
The sideshow thing started early in my life because I got into magic when I was about 8.
Okay.
When I was about 10 or 11, my father was a cop, and there was a circus in town in New York, because I grew up in New York, and there was a circus in town called the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus, and they had a sideshow there at the time. So this is going back to like early 80s,
Okay.
mid 80s, I would say, and so we, on his day off, he took us, the whole family, to the circus. And we went to the sideshow. He was like, "Oh, you got to see this." Because my dad loved all that kinds of, like, he loved weird things, even though he pretended he didn't. He totally loved it. And so we went, and because the performers knew who my father was, because he was there every night, I got picked. I got allowed to go up on stage with the sword swallower, and he let me pull the sword out of his throat. And I remember this to this very day. I remember the sound it made as it scraped his teeth, and I could feel it in the handle. And I could hear the weird, like, it was like a weird sound of air escaping as I pulled the sword out. And as it came out, there was like saliva on it. And he was like, "Now hold the sword up." And I went like that, and the crowd went crazy. And I'm like, "This is amazing." And there was like a fire eater and a snake girl and the blade basket, and all the things were there. And fire eating was like the first thing I really fell in love with. And I remember just going, I want to do that. And then I met a magician who was doing it, and I asked him, I'm like, "How do you do that?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to tell you." So I was like, okay. So then I was like, well, I'm going to figure this out. And I don't know if you ever had one, and I mean, regular people aren't going to understand this, but the torch to cane effect. Have you ever had one of those?
That's how I
yeah. So you understand that what that looks like,
yeah.
Right? So I didn't know how to make torches for fire eating, but that was the only thing I had. So my idea was, well, how do I protect my mouth from getting burned? Well, I'm going to take, the only thing I could think of in my little kid brain was, well, I know mom rubs like Vaseline on stuff when I get burned, so maybe that'll work. So I would take, and I coated the inside of my mouth with Vaseline, like gooped it in there. Awful tasting. I did not know what petroleum meant, by the way. I just was like, oh, well, this works. This will be good. And I lit the torch and I shoved it in my little pie hole, and it didn't burn. And I held my breath and put it in and put it back out. It wasn't really anything. It was just sticking a torch in and taking it back out. And then I would wipe the inside of my mouth out with a towel because it was covered with petroleum jelly, which is horrible. And then eventually I asked the guy who sold magic what I should use. And then he started me on cotton balls, using 100% pure cotton balls. And I would put the lighter, took a coat hanger, bent it, tied it on. And now those were my first torches. And they were like this big. They were really, really tiny. And around 1990, around 91, I was at an SAM convention in Stamford, Connecticut. And there was a young lady there who was a fire eater, and her and I became friendly with each other and started hanging out a lot. And one night in the hotel room I was staying in, she showed me her fire eating torches and showed me how to do that. And then she made torches and gave them to me.
That's awesome.
Along with a wonderful, wonderful memory of that magic convention. I was like 18 at the time when I got my, 17, 18 when I got my first like real professional torches. And she showed me her design, and I was like, wow, that's really good. And then over the years, I've improved upon it and made different variations of it. And those are the ones I still use today. And now the torches are like that big and about that long and produce a flame that's like 3-4 foot long. Jeff McBride always like laughed because the first time he ever saw me eat fire, he was like, holy.
That's hilarious. That's so, I don't know if you remember this or not, but back I think it was like 2009. So we met at Trends World in St. Louis.
Yeah.
You were working for the Haunted House, Headless Horseman. A lot
Yes.
of the people, a lot of our like current fans don't know anything about my Haunted House days or or whatever, you know, but I was hardcore into haunted houses. And I remember messaging you like a few weeks later asking you about fire eating and fire breathing, and you gave me your phone number and said call me, and we chatted, and then I ended up having doing fire breathing, and we talked about fire breathing, but we didn't talk about fire eating. And then I talked to Todd Robbins a little ways down the road after that. And he gave me tips on fire eating as well as eating light bulbs. And light bulbs are the worst thing I've ever eaten. Like
I've eaten thousands of them, and I no longer do that stunt anymore. I retired it many years ago.
It's so terrible.
It's I mean, I used to, when I was working at Headless Horseman, I was doing 4 shows a night, 3 and 4 nights a week. So add that up to like 13 years, and we would start this 3rd week of September and run through the 1st week of November. And I mean, and that was just that one show, not to count all the other. I was on the fair circuit for like 10 years doing fairs and festivals, and I would, do 4 shows a day, for like, some fairs were 4 days, some shows were 10 days, some shows were 2 weeks. And it was like every day, and I mean, I pooped out enough glass, to build a lampshade, to build a giant lampshade out of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was not. I just did it the one time, and I was like, but it's not for me. Nope. Like I
remember the first time I tried it.
I just wanted to do some creepy
went
stuff
for
too.
it. Yep, I remember I was living in a tiny apartment in New York, and I took a light bulb and I broke it in the sink. I took a little piece of glass and I put it in my mouth and I just chewed it. And I'm like, and I swallowed it, and I'm like, well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. And then, cause there was nobody to talk to. I had nobody. It was like, I just had to figure it out. And then as I got better at things and I met old timers, the older guys, and then they were like, well, I know what you need to do, son. You need to do it like this, and you need to eat this, and you got to eat this before, you got to eat this after, you got to drink this. And they taught me the regimen of like food that was important to have in your system before and after. So that was interesting. And so those are the tricks and secrets. I had no idea when I first started. I was just like, eat the glass, and there we go. I mean, super stupid way to do it, but
don't try
back
this
then
at home,
I
kids.
just didn't know any better.
I think that's a funny statement. Don't try this at home, but that's where we all try these things. Like, where else do we try? Where do you try?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a funny.
I always tell people. I mean, now with the internet and with technology, it's so much easier to reach out to people. Nowadays, and talk to them and be like, hey, listen, I want to do this. Can you? And I mean, we can do it this way. It's not face to face, but it's at least a platform that people can interact and learn how to do it while someone's watching you very closely. I helped a friend of mine, a magician. His name is Matt Johnson. I don't know if you know him. He lives up in Canada. Fantastic escape artist, guy with the big beard and tattoos. I know really good friend of mine. I love that guy to death. I worked on a stunt on the eye hook stunt with that he wanted to add into the show, in conjunction with an escape. So I made the eye hooks for him and then sent them to him. And then we did a video conference, and I was trying to teach him. I'm like, okay, this is going to really suck, and it's going to hurt. It's going to be awful. You're going to hate it. And I remember the first time we talked after he tried it, he was like, this is like the worst thing. It hurts so bad. Like, yeah, I know. I was like, it's going to suck for a while until you get used to it. There's no way around it. And he's like, but you swing stuff really far. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, it didn't start out that way.
Exactly.
I was like, that takes, I mean, I do it at the museum. When I perform at the museum here in Vegas, I do 20, 30 shows a day. Yeah. And, and I do that, not at every show, but almost every single show I do the eye hook thing. And your muscle, I just built my muscles up in my face so much now. It's like, and it's no big deal. But when I first did it that many times, man, I was sore for like a week.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's not.
But I kept doing it anyway. I just cleaned the gunk out of my eyes and stuck them back in, and just kept doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't. I'm not man enough for that one. So
it's not for everybody.
Not afraid to admit it either. So it's
no. There's a lot of things I won't do.
So you mentioned museums. So like for people that don't know, you work for Zach Baggins at the Haunted Museum there in Las Vegas, and you perform magic and sideshow like 5 days a week. You said
5 days a week. Yes, yeah, and I'm part of the tour basically.
Normally you do magic and sideshow 5 days a week at the museum, but currently right now it's closed, obviously because coronavirus. But
because the Rona done messed up everything here in town. It's shut down. But we're close to opening up again. A lot of stuff. Today was actually the first day that museums and zoos and aquariums could all reopen again here in town.
Gotcha.
We still have there's a lot of new and interesting stuff going on at the museum construction wise.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be opening around mid-June. I'll be posting on my website and on all my social media stuff. And if people go online and just look up the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, Zach Baggins Haunted Museum, just if you follow us on any of the social media, everything will be listed on there, the exact days we're opening. And there's going to be, of course, obviously, a lot of extra things now that come into place because of the whole Corona thing. But we're working on all that stuff right now.
Do ghosts have to follow the social distancing rules?
No, they are immune. I would assume to the whole Rona.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like I mentioned before we started, this is broadcast on WCYN here in Cynthiana, Kentucky, and we have to take a commercial break. So that's coming up pretty soon. But so I don't want to get you off on another tangent and have it cut you off. But I think it's kind of funny because so you started out doing magic, got into sideshow, you worked haunted houses doing sideshow magic. Now you're in Vegas working, doing magic and sideshow for the paranormal. Well, what's funny is, I've been doing magic my whole life, just like you. I worked with a sideshow, traveled with a sideshow, did sideshow stuff, did magic and sideshow at a haunted house. We met from a haunted house convention.
Yeah.
And then I worked with Zach. He doesn't remember me. He'll never even know I existed. But years and years ago, like I worked with Zach very briefly, him and when Ghost Adventures first started, and I traveled the paranormal circuit and did magic shows at paranormal conventions all the time. So like we did horror conventions and paranormal conventions. Yeah. And that's so like there's so much in common there that it's
a weird little weird web of stuff how we met. I mean the Trans World show is like such a collection.
I miss that show.
Oh man, I do too.
I haven't been since 2010, I think.
Yeah, I think I've been gone even longer than that.
So.
And maybe right around 2009, 2010, maybe was around the last time I went. And because after I left Headless Horseman and stuff, and just started working out here more, and I was a buyer for that haunted house. So not only did I do my show, but
I was selling stuff and you were buying stuff.
And I was buying stuff, not with my money, so it was great. But yeah, it's such a great convention filled with people who, like, if you're into haunted houses, I cannot suggest strongly enough to go to the Trans World show, find a way to get there and go. Yeah, it will. If you love haunted houses and you love Halloween, it is the only place to be. And it's usually around the first or second week of March. And
I don't know if you knew this, but Sperry used to go every year too. He lived in Chicago, so he would go to Trans World.
Yeah, I remember. This was before I met him.
That's so
I didn't know him then. But I remember Steve Chezza. He used to go. I remember running into him briefly there, but it was like we were just like internet friends and it was weird, like people didn't talk to each other. It was really bizarre.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're about to take a quick commercial break here on WCYN 101.3 FM, Cynthiana, Kentucky. I'm chatting with my good, freaky, scary, awesome friend, John Shaw. direct from Las Vegas. Hope you all are enjoying this episode, and we'll be right back.
And we're back to the Quarantainment Podcast. Here's your host, Reed Masterson.
Welcome back, guys, to Quarantainment, the socially distant podcast. If you're just now tuning in, I'm hanging out with my pal, John Shaw, direct from Las Vegas, sideshow performer, extraordinaire, illusionist, magician, escape artist. He even looks like a samurai warrior if you get on his website. It's kind of crazy. I don't know.
That's an old promo photo.
I love that photo, though. It's so good. I remember, like, when I first met you, seeing those pictures and stuff. On your website and or online and stuff, and I was like, dude, man, look at this guy and his crazy beard and his crazy hair and his samurai swords and like craziest thing. I like such a memorable, like, people don't forget that, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't forget the beard, and that's
that's always been one of my things. And I've talked at Mystery School with Jeff McBride about the crafting of what I look like. And it's changed over the years because times change. You have to change. Yeah. I've always had this, I started doing the weird beard thing, mid 90s, probably around 93, 94.
So when I was like 4, that's cool.
When you were like 4. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
and it was actually inspired by Harry Blackstone. Oddly enough, because I had this conversation with Gay Blackstone.
Senior or
she
junior?
Asked me, huh?
Senior or junior?
Junior.
Okay.
So if you look up old, photos of Harry Blackstone Jr., it wasn't that his beard was really weird, but he had the goatee, but then right here it came out a little bit and just stopped. It came out and just was like pointed just a little bit. And that was the first time I realized that you could shave your facial hair into like other designs. And I'm like, well, that's neat. And my facial hair started coming in early on in my life. And so I decided early on that I always had the goatee thing going all through my teens. And then when I started getting into my early 20s, I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna do something different. And I let everything grow in, and I took an eyeliner pencil and I started just drawing weird shit on my face, and then put the shaving cream on and started shaving it and then letting it grow in. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I'm working on something, you know. And initially it started with like a weird sideburn thing that came down and then hook connected to here, and then I started adding like, then I started drawing in little sections. I'm like, I'll make this pointed. And then I was like, well, the hair can just grow in and I don't have to draw it on. I was like, well, that'll be easier. And then I just started messing around with different designs, and then this is the more current one. This is my lazy man version, I think I would say, because it used to be a lot more. Yeah, it used to be a lot more extravagant at one point, and then as I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't really feel like working that hard anymore. But one of the things I talked about at Mystery School was about crafting your look, because my thing is like, there's a few things I'm very passionate about with creating your look, and some of them are basically either be the best dressed or the weirdest dressed person in the room, and create a look that says that you are somebody or something. People should look at you and pay attention.
Yeah, for some reason.
You
stand out.
Yeah, and my thing is like, you don't have to remember my name, but if you've seen me somewhere, you're gonna be like, oh, the beard guy. I don't care. I'll take it. You know, when I do shows, like I've been on Pawn Stars and Ghost Adventures and you know, all those different shows. And people are like, hey man, I've seen you before. And it's like, it's the beard. Then that's the first thing they're like, I remember this. And they always make the same like weird hand gesture. And it's funny, but it works. It totally works. And that's what works for me. And I try telling people, I'm like, this is what you have to develop. Like if you look like everybody else, then you're just going to fall into that category. I mean, Dan Sperry's a good buddy of mine. He don't look like anybody else.
Definitely does not.
Bizarro. He doesn't look like anybody else.
Yeah.
The
that's
Shocker,
where
all these guys.
Greg, right? Yeah. So
Greg. I mean, all these guys you create, and it's oddly enough that we're all good friends here in town, because we're all like these weird little misfits of magic and sideshow stuff, and we just all get along because we all understand what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's with my normal hair, not the hat. That's one of those things that it's branding. It's part of the whatever, and people love the hair. Like and honestly, I don't like it. So it's just a pain because it's a hassle to do, and by the time it's done, it's like I'm wearing a helmet.
Yep, I totally understand.
And then you got to wear it for hours upon hours. You can't lay your head down.
Your head hurts.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
you get that.
It's
that
a physical.
tightness.
It's an actual pain. Like
that tightness that happens in your head when you put so much stuff on it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh crap, and it's like you go to bed, you wake up, and your head's crunched over, and I'm like, oh, I gotta fix my hair and comb it out and do it up again, and yeah, it's a nightmare. It's funny. Are you familiar with Murray Sawchuck, Magic Murray?
Yeah, we did a show with Murray a few years back.
So I mean, you've seen Murray's hair.
Yeah. I remember a guy when we did this show with Murray, the promoter guy. He was like, "I'm not trying to give you a big head or anything, but he's like, you've got that look, He's like, you got that rock star, whatever. He's like, it's like Murray, like he's got that crazy hair, whatever. He's like, you got that vibe, people recognize you, whatever. I was like, that's a good compliment because I've been working on that for a long time.
People don't realize it's not just about the show. It really isn't. Like you could have a great magic act, but if no one remembers you, what was the purpose of it?
It's kind of like what I was talking about during the commercial break with Copperfield. He makes a life-size skeletal T-Rex appear during his show.
Yeah.
But without Copperfield, without his style, without his performance, without his character, without his the T-Rex is weird. It doesn't work, and I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't sell it. It doesn't fit me. It doesn't make any sense. And so but he's developed the style and the character development and the ability to be able to make things like that be okay in that setting, and people accept it, and it's not weird because he's developed that character that comes across to you, and he gets all the information he needs to you just by the way he acts and whatever, and the style of the show. And that's something we've always worked on. And I think it comes from being a haunted house, character development. I never broke character when I acted. I was full face prosthetics. Gargoyles, demons, whatever. And if I was a gargoyle or demon, then I was a gargoyle demon. Like if I was using the porta potty, like I was just a gargoyle demon using the porta potty. You know what I'm saying? Like it's And I took I took a lot of pride in that acting because that's what they're there to see. They're not there to see a random person dressed up in a mask. They're there to see a live action movie or whatever. And when you're working places like Headless Horseman or where I worked, it's
a production. Like these people are paying a lot of money, and you don't want to be just some guy in a mask going boo,
And that's And what's funny when we started our first show, Ashton and I together back in 2008, when we started performing together, I didn't have a following or anything, and I had to figure out how to market my show to people. And we landed this show at this theater, and it was totally off the wall, like it wasn't planned.
Yeah.
And I was like, they put it in October, so I was like, first off, I was like, okay, Halloween show, like that's Halloween stuff, yep. So that's first off. I was like, but who am I? Like I didn't have that character. I didn't have a stage show. It wasn't developed, but we landed a theater. I didn't have a promo. I didn't have pictures. I didn't have nothing.
Yeah.
But I was working for that company, and we were making all these prosthetics and everything. So I did my first stage show in a full rhinestone like tuxedo get up as a demon gargoyle.
Yeah.
And it took 4 hours to glue all that stuff to my face, and paint and gray and all this stuff. And I took promo pictures in my bedroom and against a white bed sheet, and
yep. Oh yeah.
and had flames shooting out of my hands, this gray gargoyle face with a rhinestone tux on. And I was like, I don't care. Like, it's just, and it just said Reed, like, and I didn't even use my last name. So it was just Reed.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like Cher. So it was like Reed Impossible Magic. And we called the show Impossible Magic. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I was like, we printed out 8x10s and I hung them up and we sold out because it was just so weird. It was just like, what is this guy? I mean, it says Magic, but who cares? Yeah. Like, I'm like, what is this? Like, tickets are cheap. Let's figure this out. And, like, we sold it out, and then we sold it out for like, I don't know, 12 years or something.
Wow.
Like after that. But the problem was after that is I pigeonholed myself into being that character for a while. And
yes.
For the first like 3 years, I had to wear a dumb mask. Like, I was like, oh, this is terrible. So like, it wasn't until 2000, or well, the first 5 years. Yeah, it's first 5 years. Yeah. So like 2012 or something like that was the first time I did a show without prosthetics on.
Yeah.
But it allowed me to, first off, nobody knew who I was. So even if I bombed, I get to take that off.
Yep.
And you don't know that I'm that guy. So
yeah.
So I had huge stage fright, but that barrier, that mask changed all that. I got to change my voice.
Yeah.
I got to just be a completely different person and do a weird magic show with this mask on. And that's kind of how we started. So it's wild.
That's great.
And then the hair and, like it's just character development. But that allowed me to realize how important character development was and producing a show.
And it's super important. Yeah,
so
it's super important. And a lot of people don't, a lot of people don't do it. And whatever your character is, whether it be the guy on the street, that's your character, then you have to be that whole thing. And you have to look the part from top to bottom, you know. If you're going to be a fancy dressed, magician, if you're going to be a suit and tie guy, that's great. But have a really nice suit, or get a suit made that doesn't look like other people's suits. You gotta search these things out. One of the things when I was, we were in Shanghai I was in a show with Joaquin Ayala in Shanghai, and we were there for 3 months. And on our days off, Joaquin and I we would go down to like the garment district in Shanghai, and because he'd been to China dozens of times. I had never been. It was my first time. And I'm like, and he took me down and he was showing me all this stuff. And he was like, look, you can get a whole suit made for $125. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. And look, and you can pick all the material and the lining and there's the buttons, everything. And boom, custom made suit. And they do it like in 2 days, 3 days, make you a custom suit. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I tell you, go to China. It's amazing. Well, obviously not now, but eventually
yeah.
it's great. It's great. But I doing that kind of stuff, it just finding your style is very important. It's very, very important. And my style, my normal everyday clothes really has bleeded into like what my stage wear is, to the most part, where it's like, this is just my look. When I go out, this is how I look. Right now, like I'm at home and, I haven't done my hair in 3 months. And it was funny because I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday, and I was like, man, I wonder if I'm going to remember how to do my hair, my show hair, because I haven't done it in so long.
That's what I was thinking. I actually got mine cut, and it's shorter than it's ever been since I was like 10. So like right now, I can't even do my hair. So I'm like, but I don't see any future of doing it anytime soon. So it's okay.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
For us,
I talk to a lot of guys, a lot of performers are all over the world, and everyone's kind of in the same boat. I consider myself kind of fortunate because we're going to be opening up again, and the upside to working at an attraction in Las Vegas is people are going to come here, and even though this whole thing is going to go on, and we're going to have all these safety measures in place, I'm literally going to be performing behind plexiglass at this point. But I can still do my show. I can still tell ghost stories and talk about paranormal stuff, and then perform for them, even though I'm in like this weird little aquarium.
You do the Pepper's ghost thing.
I could, yeah, we could. we don't do anything. We don't do any magic stuff at the museum specifically because Zach doesn't want to mix, even though he loves it. He's like, I don't want to mix.
Yeah, it's
anything because then people are going to think the other stuff could be that.
Exactly. Too. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah, so because when I first got there, I was like, man, I got this great floating table thing we can do. We can do like a seance table. And he's like, nope. Everything magic. He just like, pow, pow, pow. He just shot it down. And then, and at first I was like, oh, that's a bummer. And then I'm like, because I'm looking at it from an entertainment point of view. And he's just like, no, because, I mean, you have so many people who don't believe in paranormal as it is. And then you add this guy doing magic, they're going to like, well, all this.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes total sense. I would be disappointed, I guess, as a patron, if I was, because they don't come there to see a magic show anyways. So that's, No,
they're coming there to see haunted artifacts and really weird, cool stuff. And we give them a plethora of those things.
So during all this, like you mentioned that like a lot of people are doing a lot of different things during the Rona, and like I said, I created the podcast, which we also had the variety show, which you were on, which thanks for that, because that was fun. And then we've got our virtual illusion show that we're doing, which is weird, doing magic through a screen. It's not my gig.
Yeah, well, your show was the first one I did, and the first virtual show I did, and it was really bizarre because here's my girlfriend standing there with the camera shooting me, and I'm like trying to be lively and entertaining, and there's literally like
zero
nobody
response.
here. Yeah, there's nobody here, and you're just like, oh, I hope somebody likes this somewhere.
I got a lot of comments, and people are doing some crazy things, and I actually did fire eating after your spot. And talked
sweet.
I did some fire stuff, and Ashton did her blockhead. So
blockhead thing, nice.
Yeah, so we did that after yours. But a lot of people are doing different things, and you said you have a podcast as well. Yeah.
So a few months before the Rona hit, I started this thing. This producer here in town, this guy who produces TV shows mostly. He moved here from Texas and contacted me and was like, hey, I want to do. I think you have a really neat look. Would you ever consider hosting your own show? And I'm like, no. And because I just like, I'm always a guest on shows, but I didn't really ever think of myself as somebody who would interview other people. But I have a lot of really weird and interesting friends. And being in Las Vegas, there's a lot of people to choose from.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, maybe we should put together like a podcast show, and we'll shoot it. It'll be on Facebook Live. We can air it on YouTube and do it. And he has a whole studio in his house. He took his entire garage and turned it into this amazing studio. It's really, really cool. And so we did it, and it's called After Dark with John Shaw. You can go to afterdark.host, I think afterdark.host is the website. And when you go to that, there'll be there's like a bar at the top, and you can click on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, and it'll take you to the thing. We have a bunch of shows that are uploaded that you can watch now. But my first guest was Tape Face, which, if you guys remember, I think 2016 on AGT, he was one of the big standout stars on there, and he was the guy that had the oven mitts that sang to each other and then made out at the end. But Sam and I met out here when he first came to Vegas, and we just hit it off, and we had a lot of mutual friends, which made it easy to connect. And then he and I became really good friends, and I'm like, hey man, I'm starting the show, and I need like a legit person here in town to give me like some street cred. And fortunately, he was really nice, and he came on, and we talked all about his AGT experience and stuff. And then since then, I've had like some really interesting guests. I had an internet influencer, I guess you want to say, or a social media influencer. Her name is Ellie Brown. I don't know.
Okay, I know Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rick Lax's fiance.
Yeah.
I met her through him, and I had her on, and she has a great story about her cancer surviving, and like all kinds about being a model and all this kind of stuff, and then how her life has changed from she was a singer and a model, and now she's life is different. And her story is just amazing. And then I had the dude who created the Let's Storm Area 51 event. And he moved here from California. He moved here to Vegas. A mutual friend was like, hey man, I can get you, this guy's name's Matty Roberts. And he was like, I can get him on your show. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And then I've had another guy who's like a sports betting guy here in town, who's like one of the highest winning sports betting guys in the country. And so he came on and talked, and we had him right around the Super Bowl. And then I had another friend of mine named Evan Stone, who's a very famous porn star. And you've probably seen him. If you look him up online, Evan Stone, I guarantee you, if you've ever watched anything, and you all have, and say you didn't, you're lying, you've probably seen him and his thing. And it's super funny. So the great thing is about my show is I have all different kinds of people, from performers to like social media influencers, singing. I'm trying to do all this stuff. And then the Rona hit, and it kind of messed up, because I had a really great UFO guy coming on. He's going to still come on, but I have a bunch of really cool people coming on. My friend's a guitar player for Hell Yeah, and Vinnie Paul's band and stuff. So it's a lot of good stuff is coming, man. So if you guys go online, you can actually watch it. You just look it up. It's on Facebook. It's on all the things.
Cool, man. Well, John, it looks like we're running out of time here. So,
I hear the music.
Yeah, it's coming in. So I really appreciate it, man. I hope this was fun. I'll check out the After Dark show for sure. And,
yeah.
Hopefully, we'll get to see each other again. This
yeah,
year.
man.
We were planning to come out there.
Vegas is opening up June 4th. The casinos are opening, so not too long after that, where the whole town will be open pretty much. So come on out.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to Quarantainment, the socially distant podcast. My name is Reed Masterson. This is episode 5 with my good friend John Shaw. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Quarantainment, a socially distant podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, retweet, share, comment, and anything else you can do from at least 6 feet away. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home, and above all else, stay creative. Join us next week. Same time, same place, same host, new interviews. For more info on the entire Quarantainment series of events, visit mastersonsmagic.com.